So my name is Michael White. I'm a principal with Consulting for CRM. Just a quick review of our company. We're a Microsoft CRM products and services group. Our professional CRM product based on Microsoft CRM was launched last year, and we're dramatically changing the success our clients are having with CRM, really driving user adoption and helping them to meet their CRM goals. If you're interested in hearing more about our product, please contact us for more information. There'll be some contact details at the end of the presentation. In our ongoing commitment to our customers and our prospects, we focus our outreach on what we refer to as education through experience. We're delighted to have Debra Baker of Law Leaders Lab present a three-part webinar series over the next 4 weeks. Debra is going to discuss practical marketing and business development tactics for enhancing relationships in the new era of legal services. Again, each session is going to be recorded, made available for view and sharing with your firm. Today's session sets the foundation for the series. Debra is going to focus on the changing dynamics in client behavior and the need to create better client conversations in the business development and sales process. Next step in the series on October 8th, Debra will focus on how firms can leverage intelligence to nurture these critical conversations, leading to the final webinar on October 22nd, which ties everything together in identifying strategies and tactics to ensure your law practices evolve and survive in the coming decade and beyond. For those that are in attendance today, don't worry about registering for the next 2 sessions. We'll sign you up following the session today. So about our speaker, I'm always impressed when I'm reviewing Debra's resume. She has more than 20 years experience working in the legal industry in many different facets. I've worked personally with Debra, reviving failed CRM implementations in 2 AM100 firms. She has a very unique style in working with the lawyers, working with the marketing departments, working with various constituents, and I think that's what makes her so remarkable in the consulting she does today. As CEO and founder of Law Leaders Lab, Debra helps lawyers respond to changes in the legal market so they can achieve a greater return on their marketing and business development investment. From my perspective, the driving principle of her consulting practice is that the traditional model for delivering legal service today no longer really meets the best interests of clients and must change for lawyers to be successful in this current very competitive business climate. Debra is a licensed attorney. Her background includes senior marketing and business development positions for a Global 100 firm and a leading technology company. Prior to these positions, she was an award-winning journalist for the ABA Journal, where she covered law practice, management, and ethics. She's committed to transforming the legal market by helping clients understand what drives the need for those legal services and how to better respond. With that impressive review as a background to our session, please let me introduce Debra Baker. Take it away, Debra.
Great. Thank you, Michael. That was really nice. I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. As Michael said, my company is Law Leaders Lab, and we're really based on the premise that the way most law firms are running their businesses these days is not sustainable over the long term. So we come at the business of the law from a business development client growth perspective, but really our goal is to help lawyers rethink the way they create, the way they deliver, and most of all, how they're communicating that value to clients. Because there are just, as Michael said, so many dynamics going on in the marketplace today. This topic, why relationships alone are not enough to drive new business, is a topic I got interested in a couple years ago. And when I read a survey done by the Corporate Executive Board, and this had nothing to do with law firms, what it was a study of high-performing sales representatives in business-to-business complex sales. So not legal, but certainly legal would fall into this category. And what they did this study, and what they were trying to figure out was what was the difference between a high-performing sales representative and an average or an underperforming one. And they did this study, and as part of this study, they classified 5 different types of sales representatives. One of them was the relationship builder. And that's your classic trusted advisor. You know, the client is always right. What can I do? You know, how can I listen to your problem? How can I solve your problem? The thing that I think most of us, but certainly myself, I really thought was the essence of being a good salesperson. And what this study showed was that only 4% of high-performing sales representatives fell into this category. The rest fell into different categories. And I thought that that was really interesting. And it really got me thinking about the legal, and you know, my clients, which are lawyers, and what does that say about a business that's really built on relationships, and what are those driving factors, and what do we, you know, and lawyers on top of that have the additional challenge of most of us are worker producers or business development producers. So not only do we have to win the business, we have to then go do the work. And so how do we manage these things if what we thought we are doing best, which is building strong relationships, if we're not doing that right, and what does it mean? So that was kind of, I started getting into that research a couple years ago. Over the last year, we've been doing our own proprietary research with general counsel, chief financial officers, and other decision makers inside middle market companies. And we've been going after that question, how do you define value, what's important and what isn't important? And so this presentation today is kind of the combination of both of those things. And what I thought I would do is walk you through the premise that relationships alone aren't enough to drive business, talk about the factors that lead to that, and then talk about what we do about it. And you know, part of this will go into the next series, but what I thought we'd do today is, you know, try to give you something tangible that you can take away, and then hopefully some bigger picture thinking, because obviously these aren't all things that we're going to solve overnight. So that's kind of the framework. We'll leave time for questions, but I'm hoping, you know, to do this in about 20 minutes so that I know everybody's time is valuable. So we'll work through, and then, you know, we will have time for questions at the end, but if you have anything as we go along, don't hesitate to, I think you can just write the questions in on your access screen there, and we'll try to keep an eye out for them. But okay, so let's dive into this. Why relationships alone are not enough to drive business. First, I need to be able to move my screen. Okay, so let's talk about the factors that we're all dealing with today. The first one, again, this is universal. It's not tied to lawyers alone, but it is, you know, time. It's the great equalizer that we all have. We all live on that 24-hour clock, and you have so many competing demands on your time. If you're a marketing person, you personally do, you know your lawyers do, and your lawyers are probably, and the lawyers who are on the call, you know, how do you balance, you know, again, that need to build business, to do the work, and I think most of us at this stage of our life are also looking to have some kind of work-life balance. So we just don't have enough time to get in front of people the way that we used to. And so that, you know, just the mere opportunity to build relationships and to nurture those relationships face-to-face are increasingly limited. And that's just one factor we're not going to be able to change. The second factor is information overload. So, you know, one of the great things about being smart and educated and knowing something that a lot of people don't know is that you're allowed to, when you go have this FaceTime with people, you're allowed to show people how smart you are. And, you know, all of this complex information that you have, you know, in your head, and to be able to use that to really demonstrate your expertise when you're having face-to-face meetings. But the reality of it is things have changed. You know, the internet has 100% changed the way that we access information. And now the challenge is not figuring out what information we need, but how to take all of this information that is coming at us and figuring out what information is important. So when you're having those face-to-face meetings, your time is really less about showing someone what your expertise is, and it's really about how can you help distill those conversations. So that the way you're building and the conversations you're having during, with your clients and with your referral sources and your prospects are different than they used to be. And then the third factor is really technology. Technology is such a game changer. So the Corporate Executive Board did this study as part of this study of business-to-business sales. What they learned from interviewing the consumers of complex B2B services was that clients are more than 50% through the sales cycle, or 57% through their decision making on who to hire before they have their first conversation with a service provider. So that is completely game changing in the way that we're building relationships, because by the time we're having those initial meetings, they've already done the due diligence and the vetting, and we need to bring something new to the conversation. Otherwise, all we have left to talk about is price. And with the issues, the pressures we're already under as it relates to costs, we don't want to have to compete on price. So what that means, that's what you do in your face-to-face meeting, and it also means that you need to do something before. You really need to be able to reach your potential client before that first meeting with valuable information in the market, getting valuable information to those people because they may not be contacting you. So again, these are three factors that are, again, related to all business to business, not just to service providers.
Just a real quick comment on that, Deborah. We're absolutely seeing that in our business from the standpoint of prospects. Clients are more educated with exactly what they need, and there's the sense that that they have most of the answers before they reach out and make that first contact. And several times setting up for a significant demonstration, and it's kind of cut short. You got 30 minutes. Tell me your value proposition and then give me a quote. One thing I left out to the audience from a housekeeping perspective, please feel free to send in any questions you have, and we'll review those at the end through the Q&A session.
Cool. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And when you think about general counsel, particularly that middle market client, which for most of us is the core of our business, there's the added factor, and I think this is, I don't have data on it, but I would say since the financial crisis that we're talking about high-priced, complex things, and certainly CRM technology is one of them, but legal services as well. And there's just so much risk associated with making those high-dollar purchases, too, that another factor is that people who used to be able to make unilateral decisions and that quick, okay, I like you best, you win, let's go. Now they want to bring more people in, a little bit of CYA on making decisions. So there's more people involved in that decision-making process as well. So again, it just really shows that, and no one's saying relationships aren't important. They are, of course, critical. They're always going to be the essence of what we do, but how we build them, how we establish them, maintain them, and nurture them over time. That's what we're talking about today, and how can we change those things. And then from the perspective of the legal industry, and what's a good PowerPoint without a madman slide here, but this is, and I have lots of clients, particularly those late 60s, early 70s, who are still practicing. this is the way business was done. It was all about, having that rapport, being able to go to lunch, hopefully having 2 or 3 martinis. I'm sorry I missed that in my life personally. I wish we could go back to that, but again, there's just not the time. There's too much going on in people's lives, and so for legal, where you're talking about, 20 years ago, 15 years ago even, there was more legal work than there was demand for legal services, and that's pretty much inverted. I mean, I think we're going to see an increase in demand over the next 3 years, and that's good. I think we're going to see a really strong legal services economy over the next 3 years, but there's more lawyers in the market than ever before. And unfortunately, we're getting to this point where if you want to win new business, you have to take it from somebody else. And so it just takes more than, relationships alone cannot be your entire marketing strategy. It cannot be your entire business development strategy. So just taking all those factors and putting them in English, I come to the conclusion that business development as usual is really costly. What we're saying is that you get less face time with people, that you may very well be getting referrals, but those referrals aren't calling you for one reason or another when they're doing their due diligence, because they're not picking up the phone as soon as they get the referral. They're not making those phone calls. When you are getting that face time, when you are getting opportunities to talk about what you do, those meetings aren't turning into business. And then the business that you're getting, just because of the competitive landscape, these matters are increasingly smaller. You're getting pieces of them because they're either getting split up. There's non-lawyer, there's pieces that are going off to technology companies or to non-lawyer service providers. And they're increasingly price sensitive, because that is, again, that's the world we live in. It is a buyer's market. People are becoming more sophisticated in the way they purchase. And again, there's just more lawyers to choose from. So what we're going to focus, I think next week, or the second session, we're going to talk about the top end of this chart. Today I really wanted to start with the end, because so much of what we're going to talk about is really about how do you build that foundation for making the time you get with clients more valuable, and creating these conversations that will lead to sales opportunities. So we're going to start with just kind of think through what you're doing in your face-to-face meetings and how you can better position yourself when you're talking to folks. And I've really broken it down into three areas, and I think the first 2 are things you can take away, and then the third one is kind of a longer-term project, but I want to kind of tee up the concept for you today to leave you with something to think about, and again, hopefully something to have some conversations internally with others inside your firms. But going back to that first slide about time, the one thing we need to recognize is that when you do get face time with clients, you need to make that time as valuable as possible. So I myself, when I received business development training, it was what we would call consultative sales. So if you have had sales training, you may have heard that term before. And it's really the traditional way most professional services providers think about the buying process, and that's, you do your homework, you come prepared, you can talk about your client's business, and then you ask them questions, and you kind of, almost kind of go through this diagnosis so that you're collecting information, and then you can take that information and then you can craft, you can go back to them at a later date and you can craft this unique proposal that addresses their specific needs. If you're a really, really good salesperson and they, the rainmakers who are out there are very good, they might be able to customize that solution and sell it, sell it right there on the spot. But that's kind of the traditional. It's the way most of us have been trained in sales probably for the last 20 or 30 years. The challenge with that process is that although it's all about listening, and listening is, of course, the essence of kind of building that relationship, what happens is you're doing all of this listening is almost for your benefit. So basically, the person you're engaging with is giving you information that you need to do your job better. But at the end of that, let's say it's a lunch, at the end of that lunch, that person left and they're like, I got nothing out of this meeting, right? There's not, maybe there will be something in it for them down the road, but they're basically leaving then and there with nothing. And when we're talking about very little time, and people need to choose how to use their time wisely, next time that person might not be interested in talking to you because there was no real value in it. So what I'm suggesting is let's just kind of shift that. So you definitely want to continue listening, and you definitely want to be prepared. But instead of listening so you can figure out how to sell them something down the road, what you want to be doing is to listen so that you can provide them something of value based on some of the concerns that they're getting. So your goal during this lunch, this hypothetical lunch, is not to listen to give, but to leave them with the goal of saying, with the goal being that when they walk out of that lunch, that they said, wow, that was interesting, or that was valuable to me. It was time well spent. And going into that meeting with that type of mindset. That takes us to this idea of a strategic perspective. So we talked about information overload, and again, if you're going to go to lunch and you're going to talk about what you do and the experiences that you have, what we've done as lawyers in the past is kind of traditionally talked about the legal process and what the challenges are and how do you work through this legal process. What I'm suggesting is let's shift that perspective, and instead of focusing on educating them on legal issues, how can you take those legal issues, take what you know, and apply it to their business problems? So we're really working in a world, particularly with these middle market clients, but really I think all of us, regardless of what size business or even the individual that you're working with, the line between law and business is increasingly blurred, and what most people are looking for is solutions to business problems, legal answers that are going to help them run their businesses better, or legal answers that are going to help them address, personal issues that they have. So this is almost an opportunity to, and again, instead of kind of sharing your resume with people, which first of all, they've probably done their due diligence and they already know what your resume is, but it's a way of validating your expertise in the context of their business. So I can give you an example. Let's say you've got a business that's shifting their factory to Mexico to lower their overall costs, and let's say that's we're business attorneys, and we deal with cross-border things all the time. So instead of going into that conversation and say, oh, I understand that this is what you're doing. I've done lots of work that way. Let me tell you about some of the experience I have. It's just about shifting that conversation and going into it and say, I understand you're moving your operations overseas or over the border. Our firm has a fair amount of experience like this. Typically, when our clients go through this type of shift, they run into different problems. Sometimes, they have, employment issues. Sometimes it might be leasing issues or facilities, real estate issues, and sometimes it's, maybe contractual issues with their suppliers. Are you experiencing any of these things, or is it something else? And what you've done in that very simple reframing it and providing a strategic perspective, you've taken what you know as a lawyer, your secret sauce, because what you're really good at is that knowledge work, but you've taken that and you've applied it to their real-life business problems, and you've opened up a conversation. And without ever even, saying very much about what specific experience you've had, you've validated that you understand and that you have experience in these issues. And you've also opened the door for a conversation that's going to be meaningful. And if during that conversation you can talk about how other people have solved these problems, or, red flags they should be worried about, or ways to, ways to avoid pitfalls, then at the end of this meeting, the person you've had that lunch with leaves and says, wow, I learned something today. That meeting was valuable. It's going to open the door for conversations down the road. So again, it's about listening to find something to give, and if you can give that strategic perspective, the folks, you're going to build their credibility. You're going to provide them insight that's going to help them do their business better, and they will find that valuable, and hopefully it will initiate further conversations down the road. Those are just two kind of very tactical things that hopefully you can think about and take with you today. The third piece here, this idea of building a business case, really goes to the essence of where I think all of legal marketing needs to go, and that's this idea that your true strategy for success has to be based on your ability to differentiate yourself from other firms, other lawyers who do what you do. There are other marketing consultants out there who will tell you I'm completely wrong. They will say that lawyers cannot differentiate each other. They will say that lawyers essentially do the exact same thing, and the best that lawyers can do is be memorable. But they can't really differentiate, because at the end of the day, we all do the same 5 things. I take a little different perspective on that. I would actually say that no two lawyers are alike. Even lawyers who do the same type of things, what makes them good at their job is the knowledge, because what we do is knowledge work. No one processes information the same way I do. No two lawyers do that. No two lawyers have the exact same set of experiences, and we each learn, and the ability for us to be really good at what we do is how we learn from our specific experiences. So our challenge is not trying to say, come up with some pithy elevator speech that's going to keep me memorable. Our challenge is how do we take that knowledge that's in our head, how do we peel back the layers of it and understand what is it about what we've done, what is it about our experience, what is it about our approach to business that makes me as an individual lawyer different, our practice group different, our combined experience as a practice group, or our entire experience as a firm, and how can we take that information and create a business case for why we are best positioned to do this work. And by doing that, what you do is you take away this concept, you are creating something, you're creating a conversation that provides a solution that no one else is talking about. So I don't think I know anybody who is on this call today, but if you are a marketing person or you're a lawyer, I'm going to bet that probably you have some type of PowerPoint deck or other brochure that you would use for a pitch that probably includes something about how many lawyers you are, what practice groups you have, the year you were founded, and logos with all your clients on it. I think almost every law firm that I've worked with, that I've been inside myself, puts together essentially the same pitch deck, which is all about us and all about, and here's the experience that we've done, and here's our bios. What we're talking about with a business case is really this idea of instead of pitching and instead of selling, what you're doing is you're showing your understanding of the problem, you're providing a solution to them, and typically this solution is probably a solution that you and every other lawyer that practices in the same area, the solution is universal. And then if you do it right, you go a layer deeper and you say, here is our approach to solving this problem that is different than what anyone else is offering. And that approach may draw on a business process that you use or a way of doing the work of mining information that makes you solve the problem, go deeper into a problem than that. Maybe it's using technology to create an efficiency and a long-term cost savings. Maybe it's a strategy or it's a way you're packaging your services that's completely different than anyone else. But the idea is to really uncover what it is that makes you different and create and make that case to your clients, to your prospective clients, and really answer that question of why they should hire you over anyone else who looks like you and ultimately costs the same, because again, we're trying not to compete just on price. Lots of ways to uncover that. Oh, I'm sorry, Michael, did you have a question?
Well, I was just saying we're bumping up against the timeline a bit here, and just wanted to give folks the opportunity to raise their hand with questions. But I know that slide 9 had some really rich information that this group would not want to miss, I would think.
Yeah.
So if you could quickly go over slide 9, and then we'll move into Q&A.
Yeah, so if folks have any questions, if you want to start entering them in, we can collect them. I just wanted to take one minute and talk about, when we're talking about how do we build this business case, there's lots of different approaches to doing it, and it is something that takes some time. But what we really try to do with folks, our approach is to really make sure we start with understanding that opportunity, really understanding what the firm is, that's understanding, your personas of who makes your decisions, doing a gap analysis between where the market need is and your core competencies, creating that, clearly defining what your strategy is. This second bar here on differentiation strategies, this is where we're really trying to go that next layer. And again, based on what happens during this opportunity mapping process and the differentiation process, that's where you can really build out this business case. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next time, and then kind of get into how do we use that business case as the foundation for your marketing program. And that's what we'll be talking about next time. But yes, sorry, I did start pushing over our time. But if there are any questions, I'd love to take a couple minutes to address those for you.
So we've got a couple questions here in the log. What is the approach to move away? I'm trying to synthesize this into What's your approach to move away from brochureware to having those discussions? Because it's not necessarily something that lawyers have as an innate function, right? They go in and work the the traditional approach to the Mad Men slide. How do you train them on that?
Yeah, the good news about this approach is I think once you have the chance to really sit down and understand, or to have these conversations with the lawyers, most lawyers I know, and this is true for my own business, we're not really comfortable selling. We're actually comfortable doing the work because that's what we were trained to do, and that's where our comfort level is. So when you're able to really again, peel back that onion and understand why the way you work is valuable, it makes it so much easier when you're in those client meetings and when you are even at a formal beauty contest or sales opportunity, because what you're talking about is educating people about their business. You're educating people about something that's happening in their business that they aren't aware of, and that makes you feel good when you can do that. And it's, again, it's really just shifting that conversation. One, if for the marketing folks on the line, and for the lawyers, something to think about yourself. You know, in most conversations that I have with lawyers, I start talking about them. They're like, you know, you kind of go through, who are your clients? How do you get the business? And invariably, most of your business comes from referrals. Well, why do people refer you? Almost every lawyer responds something, I don't know, it's just me. And then that's kind of where the conversation can end. But if we take that it's just me concept and go one step further, well, what about you? You know, tell me about what you do. Give me an example of something that you did on a case. And then they start talking about, you know, something that they've done or something that you've done. And then ask yourself the question, did your client know that before this started? And almost everybody says no. And I would typically say, it sounds to me like you know something about your client's business that they have no idea, and they would probably want to know that. And almost everyone says yes. So it's that part of the conversation, it's that last, you know, 2 minutes of the conversation, which usually has that kernel of starting to build your business case.
So another question came in, when will the recording be distributed? We'll distribute it later today. And again, we want to thank you for staying with us. We went a little bit over. Deborah, thank you so much. And for those that attended today, as I mentioned, we'll sign you up for the next session. And yes, Deborah?
Great. If I can just, I did want to, I mentioned some research that we did, that we're just publishing, and we do have a white paper that's going to be released in the next couple of weeks. So if there's anybody on the call, again, this was research with middle market companies, CEOs, CFOs, general counsel, on how they define value in legal services. So if anybody is interested in that, if you go to my website and sign up for the newsletter, I will be sure that you are on the distribution list.
Very good. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Deborah, thank you. And we look forward to the next session in the series in 2 weeks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.